welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and I have finally made a 5-color deck. That's right. I'm not the biggest fan of 5-color decks or just 5-color commanders in general. I gotta be honest, they've really been going nuts with the 5-color commanders in the last few years. It used to be sort of a janky thing in the format, actually. Having a 5-color deck was considered kind of janky because, first of all, the mana base for a 5-color deck is incredibly difficult. That part made your life a lot harder, and of course, that's certainly not the case anymore. But also, all the commanders were not very good, right? I mean, maybe those Progenitus decks were pretty scary because, of course, once they got it out, it was really difficult to deal with. Also, the Child of Alara decks, a lot of times the repeated board wiping wasn't great, although I will say the dies rule used to be that you had to let your Child of Alara go to the graveyard and leave it there if you wanted to actually use the dies trigger. Of course, they changed that. But then they started going nuts with the 5-color commanders, and I didn't love that. They made it a lot easier to play 5-color decks. A lot of more people started doing it, and I wasn't a big fan of that. I think it kind of goes against the spirit of the format a little because, of course, the two biggest things about the format are you want to build around your commander, right? Obviously, your commander is the commander of your deck, but more importantly, the color identity of your commander signifies what colors you can play. And of course, in a 5-color deck, you don't have any restrictions there, right? Your color identity doesn't really matter. I know people always say, well, the color identity is 5-color. Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. If you can play any color, then there is no color identity. There doesn't really mean anything anymore. So I kind of don't love that it goes against the flavor of the format for that reason. I like playing less colors. I encourage people to do so. I've actually made a video talking about why it is an advantage to play less colors. And I have avoided making a 5-color deck in my entire commander career until now. I finally done it. The reason why I did is because I made a video a couple weeks ago talking about the best mana rocks in the format. And I talked about Liquimetal Torque and how much I like it. I have it rated very high. And you know what? A lot of other players maybe don't have it rated so high because it is adding colorless mana. I play only 1 and 2 color decks currently, right? That means that I never would play a 3 or 4 or 5-color deck. I mean, it's likely at some point I'll make a 3-color deck, but a mana rock that is only adding colorless mana, of course, is going to be a lot better in a 1 or 2-color deck. Once you start getting up in the colors, it gets a lot worse. And I had someone in the comments of that video say, if you would make a 5-color deck, what deck would it be? And I thought that was an interesting question. I thought about it, gave them an answer, and then I decided, you know what? I think I'm going to go ahead and make that deck. The answer I gave to that individual was Jegantha the Wellspring is the commander that I would choose for a very specific reason. For an Gruul hybrid mana 5/5 elemental elk, has companion. So of course you can use this as your companion. A lot of people do for their 5-color decks because no card in your starting deck has more than one of the same mana symbol. Its mana cost isn't that difficult to do in a 5-color commander deck. However, I don't want to. I really want the Jegantha as the commander for this deck because I don't want to just cast it as a companion, have it die, and then not have access to it again, right? That's the best thing about having your commander is you have access to it all the time throughout the game. And the reason why is because I really want that ability. Tap, add WUBRG, right? So white, blue, black, red, and green. This mana can't be spent to pay generic mana cost. That's the ability I want. I want a commander that I can tap to add WUBRG. And the reason why specifically is because all the cards that I want to play if I'm making a 5-color deck, right? It's not about specifically doing a certain thing in my 5-color deck. If I'm making a 5-color deck, for me, there's a whole bunch of cards in the history of Magic that have come out that I really would like to actually use, and this commander would allow me to do so, and allow me to do so fairly well, in my opinion. One of the things I love about this format is when I'm making a deck, now I get to go back and use all these old, fun, interesting cards in my commander deck. So that's what making a 5-color deck for me opens the door to. For example, and the card that I was thinking of when I was thinking of my answer for that person was Legacy Weapon, a 7-mana legendary artifact. If Legacy Weapon would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, reveal it and shuffle it into owner's library, so it has that you can't cheat this into play effect, right? You can't just cheat it into play from your graveyard because it has a really powerful ability. Pay WUBRG to exile target permanent. And I've always wanted to use this in a commander game, but of course you need to have a 5-color deck because it has all those pips on it. And Jegantha is the perfect commander for this. I actually think this is a really great card in a commander game. I mean, if you're in a 5-color deck, it could very easily slot into your deck, and it's a great removal option. It is a repeatable way to exile permanents. You can even get lands with this guy, right? So with my commander, it just becomes tap my commander, exile target permanent. Your commander is tap exile permanent. That seems pretty good, right? That's the kind of stuff I want to be doing in this deck, and that's probably the main card that I thought of. So what's a great commander that will allow me to use Legacy Weapon well? And I think Jegantha is. Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, hey, how about Ramos Dragon Engine? That's adding a whole bunch of mana, right? That's in fact adding double WUBRG, which you can activate your Legacy Weapon twice with, I suppose. However, I have to get all those counters on it, so now I have to build around that part of doing it. I didn't love that as much. I also thought that the potential with Jegantha was a little bit better because I could very easily untap my commander. All I have to do, and of course I did, was put a Fate Stitcher or a 1,000-Year Elixir, something like that in the deck, and now I can untap my commander, use it again. So I can very easily exile 2 permanents on my turn. So I did a little bit of an untapping theme here as well, partly because the untapping theme fit with a lot of other cards that I was using in the deck, funny enough. So for example, Garth One-Eye, which is a great fit in any 5-color deck, has a tapping ability. So it's another commander that is tapping. And I guess, again, you could make this the commander of the deck, and maybe Jegantha could be the companion if you wanted to. For me, I lean towards the commander that is going to allow me to use my Legacy Weapon the most, but Garth One-Eye could also be the commander of the deck, fits with the tapping theme, but also is great in the 99 of the deck. I also have another card that works better with my commander, Door to Nothingness, another really fun, interesting card that we can use in this deck that works with our commander. Of course, 5 mana artifact, enters the battlefield tapped and pay double WUBRG. So 2 white, 2 blue, 2 black, 2 red, and 2 green, and tap it, sacrifice Door to Nothingness. Target player loses the game. So that's one of the win cons, I guess, in this deck, and works with the untapping theme because, of course, I can use my Fate Stitcher to untap it if I want to use it right away. So it does kind of work there. And of course, my commander will activate this. So if I want to activate my commander to add WUBRG, this mana can't be spent to pay generic cost. That's no problem. Works great with the Door to Nothingness. That's not a generic cost. So if I can untap my commander, again, I have lands, right? So I can tap my Jegantha to add WUBRG for my Door to Nothingness and then tap 5 lands as well. A lot easier to do in this deck than it would be in a lot of other decks, right? I can also tap my Prismatic Geoscope to add WUBRG that I need. And again, fits the untapping theme because I can untap it, use it again, right? So Prismatic Geoscope essentially doing what my commander is doing. Timeless Lotus, again, essentially the exact same thing. 5 mana, enters the battlefield taps to add WUBRG. So it's a backup for my commander, essentially. Works with the untapping thing. I can use it again. I can use this to activate my Legacy Weapon. I can use this and my commander to activate my Door to Nothingness, right? You can kind of see where I'm going with this, but it's not just built around Legacy Weapon, right? This is not a card in the 99 deck. I put a whole bunch of things that I can be using. Fun, interesting, old cards that really fit nicely with this theme. The Bringer series works really nicely with this theme. And again, these are cards that I think you could probably throw in any 5-color deck. And the reason why is because they all have this alternate casting cost, right? They're really expensive, 9 mana, that's a lot. However, you may pay WUBRG rather than pay this spell's mana cost. So any of these Bringer series, and I got 3 of them in this deck because I put the 3 that I think work best in the deck. For example, Bring of the Black Dawn, which again, you could put in any 5-color deck and it'll be great. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may pay 2 life. If you do search your library for a card, shuffle and put that card on top. So it's essentially a vampiric tutor on your upkeep. Pretty fantastic. And of course, because it's on your upkeep, that's the very next card you're going to draw. And with our commander, we can just tap our commander to cast this. That's not that difficult at all, right? We can tap our Timeless Lotus to cast this, right? It's very easy to do so in this deck. We can tap our commander to activate Kyodai Soul of Kamigawa's ability, right? This is a good card in the deck. Comes down, we can maybe make our Legacy Weapon indestructible or commander indestructible, and we can tap our commander or any of these other things that are tapping to add WUBRG to give our Kyodai +5/+5 until end of turn. So now it becomes an 8/8 flyer. That's pretty good. More interesting hold the janky ones though, Etched Monstrosity is another card that I think is not a bad include in any 5-color commander deck that works really good here. 5 mana, artifact creature, Phyrexian Golem, 10/10. Wow, a 10/10 for 5 mana, that's pretty good. However, it enters the battlefield with 5 -1/-1 counters on it. So of course, it's going to come into play and be a 5/5, but you can pay WUBRG, remove 5 -1/-1 counters from Etched Monstrosity. Target player draws 3 cards. So we pay 5 mana for this guy. We then tap our commander to activate this ability, and we now have a 10/10 creature, and we get to draw 3 cards. I think that's pretty good. Couple other really fun ones in the deck, and again, ways we can actually close out the game here: Dragon Soul Knight and Paragon of the Amisha. Basically, when I built this deck, what I did is I tried to look up cards that had WUBRG activated abilities. And these are a couple of really interesting ones. Dragon Soul Knight, 2 and a red, human knight, 2/2 with first strike. But you can pay WUBRG until end of turn. It becomes a dragon. It gets +5/+3 and gains flying and trample until end of turn. So now it is a 7/5 flying trample first strike creature. That's pretty good. Again, a 3 mana creature that all we have to do is tap our commander or one of our mana rocks, and it now becomes a 7/5 flying trample first strike creature. Is pretty great. Paragon of the Amisha, fairly similar, 2 and a white, human knight, 2/2 with first strike, and when we pay WUBRG until end of turn, it becomes an angel and gets +3/+3 and gains flying and lifelink. So it's a 5/5 flying lifelink first strike creature just from tapping our commander. Seems pretty great. Another one that does something very similar, Fleshformer, 2 and a black, human wizard, 2/2. Pay WUBRG. Fleshformer gets +2/+2 and gains fear until end of turn. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Play this ability only during your turn, but you can play it more than once each turn, right? That's the thing. Again, with any of these creatures, you can activate this ability more than once. And again, we have the untappers. We have all these different things that are adding WUBRG mana for us. So we can activate Fleshformer's ability more than once. So now it becomes a 6/6 with fear, and we give another creature -4/-4, right? These abilities get better the more you use them. I actually had the guy comment back and say, hey, well, why doesn't Jensen Carthelian Druid Exile become the commander of this deck? That seems like a better commander for the deck. Green and a white, human druid, 2/2. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, scry 1. If the spell was all colors, create a white angel creature token, flying and vigilance, and you can pay 5 and tap it to add WUBRG. So it's doing a similar ability to our commander, but not really, because this is just filtering mana. We're not gaining mana here. We have to put 5 mana into this in order to use our commander's ability. So if I want to use my legacy weapon a whole bunch of times, I can't really do that, right? I have to tap all my lands down in order to do that. So I don't think that nearly is as good of a commander for this deck. I did put it in the 99. I think it's a pretty good 99 card in this deck because, again, it does have the ability to filter mana into WUBRG, which we want to be doing in this deck a lot. And of course, that other ability is not bad as well. I don't have a ton of all colors creatures, right? So 5-color creatures in this deck. I have a few. I got 2-headed Hellkite. I got Okagachi, Vengeful Kami, just great creatures in any 5-color deck. Again, I do have a bit of a good stuff theme here, I suppose. I also have Primeval Spawn because, of course, this is just a ridiculous card, and I think it's just a really fun one to put in a 5-color deck. 5 white, blue, black, red, and green. Avatar 10/10. If it would enter the battlefield and wasn't cast, or no mana was spent to cast that, exile it instead. So really interesting wording they have on this card where they just do not allow you to cheat this into play. There is no way around it, I'm afraid. Anyone who's trying to figure out how to cheat this into play, I was trying to think of a way. I don't think it can be done. This is a replacement effect. So if for any reason it enters the battlefield without you casting it and actually spending mana to cast it, sorry, it's not going to work. It's going to get exiled instead. 10/10 Vigilance Trample Lifelink, though, is pretty worth it. Even more worth it is when it leaves the battlefield. Exile the top 10 cards of your library. You may cast any number of spells with total mana value 10 or less from among them without paying their mana cost. Pretty great include in this deck. And again, with our commander, remember, our commander is a fantastic mana dork. As long as it's being used to not pay generic costs, and any 5-color card, this is just going to give you the WUBRG you need. So all we need to cast this guy, I mean, it looks like a ridiculous casting cost, but with our commander in play, just pay 5 mana. That's it. Tap our commander and then pay 5 generic mana with our lands. Very easy to do. In fact, if we have, say, our Timeless Lotus in play, this is tap our Timeless Lotus, tap our commander, cast our Primeval Spawn. Not that difficult at all, and of course it's a ridiculously good creature in this deck. I also have some fun 5-color includes from back in the day that I think, again, are just great includes in a 5-color deck, like Samite Elder and Spirit of Resistance. Samite Elder's 2 and a white human cleric, 1/2, and you tap it. Creatures you control gain protection from the colors of target permanent you control until the turn. Again, I just think this is an auto include in a 5-color deck, particularly if your commander is 5 colors, which ours isn't. However, we do have a fair amount of 5-color creatures or even permanents in this deck. So all we have to do is have a 5-color permanent in play. And of course, we tap this and our creatures gain protection from all colors until end of turn. That seems pretty good. And Spirit of Resistance, same thing. Works better if you have an actual commander that is 5 colors, but still works pretty good here. 2 and a white enchantment. As long as you control a permanent of each color, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you, right? So if we have a 5-color creature or a 5-color permanent in play, we now will have all the damage dealt to us prevented. That seems pretty good in a 5-color deck. There it is. I did it finally. A 5-color deck. I didn't choose a commander that's actually 5 colors, funny enough, but of course it is a 5-color commander. Again, if you guys want to run with this idea or play this deck, of course I do have the deck list in the description below. You can do some mixing and matching, right? You don't have to use Jegantha as your commander. You can use it as the companion. That actually will work. You might have to make a few adjustments. I think the Bringer series would be the only cards in this deck that actually have the double mana symbols, but I don't want to take those out, right? That's why I like Jegantha as the commander and not the companion, because the Bringers was one of the cards that I really wanted to put in a 5-color deck. So this deck, I guess, is a little bit of janky old cards that I just really wanted to play that I thought worked good in a 5-color deck. It's also quite a bit of 5-color good stuff as well, but that's kind of hard to avoid when you're playing a 5-color deck, obviously. It is a really fun deck to play. I'm never actually going to put it together, of course. 5-color decks are really expensive to put together, which is one of the reasons why I avoid playing them. But if you are interested in doing so, the deck list is in the description. Feel free to give it a run for yourself. That is it for today, though, and thanks for tuning in.